You know, after talking about 7 different DC books last week, it feels real good to only have to talk about one this week. Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron Professor Thorgy, your guide to all things geeky, and welcome to another episode of Comic Class, the show every single week on this channel where we just geek out about comic books. And today, we are talking about Doomsday Clock. And holy cow, has this title been a long time coming. Rebirth is getting pretty close to its 2-year anniversary at this point, and that is when everything changed in the DC universe, and not even just in their universe, but in another famous DC related universe. Yes, for anybody who has either been living under the largest possible rock imaginable on Mars, or you just recently got into comics and you're wondering what the heck this is all about, let me go ahead and just refresh your memory on what DC Rebirth was and how it is leading into Doomsday Clock. And even if you do know what it's all about, I'm sure I've gained several new followers since we initially talked about Rebirth, and you're wondering, how do I feel about this whole Watchmen thing? So let's go ahead and just remind everyone out there, for about 5 years, DC decided to try and liven things up, bring in a new audience by completely rebooting their universe with an event called Flashpoint, and that led into a brand new universe in which everything we knew from the old universe was gone, and everything was brand new. In fact, it was even called The New 52. Now, in the New 52, the characters were younger, but a lot of the progression that we had seen them go through over the years had now been erased. A lot of that being their love lives. A lot of these characters were now no longer married to the people they had been married to for a long time. Superman, Lois Lane, they were not only single again, they now kind of had that old will they, won't they probably won't because Lois doesn't really seem to like Clark Kent anymore kind of relationship. And for many of us out there, yeah man, that kind of hurt. We love seeing those two together and we didn't want to spend another 50 years waiting for them to finally hook up again. But the same thing goes for many other characters out there, such as Barry Allen and Iris West. So people had criticized the New 52 for losing that love that was there, but it also lost legacy. Because all these characters had not been around as long as they had been before, a lot of the legacy characters were now gone. And also, just that sense of fun. These characters were far more serious. It felt like they were trying to come in here and go, this ain't yo daddy's DC Comics. No, that was goofy and lame. This, we are serious. We don't even have Superman smiling unless he's about to kick someone's ass. That's the only time in which we see Superman smiling. Also, his armor, completely made of metal. That's right, not even a costume anymore. Those trunks, they're lame, get rid of them. He is now wearing Kryptonian armor. Yeah, man, it just didn't feel like DC Comics. And that was the amazing thing about the Rebirth one-shot all those years ago when it finally came out. Holy cow, it is weird to say years ago when talking about Rebirth. But that is the thing that made that so unique. That when it came out, it turned to the audience and went, we know. And we're sorry. We know that we lost the love, we lost the legacy, we lost all the things that made DC Comics, and we're going to have that return. And they kind of literally had that return by having the old school Wally West come back and say, listen, I've been lost in time and space, and I saw what happened to this universe. Barry, you forgot about it, but you kind of changed all this with Flashpoint, but here's the thing, you didn't actually do that. Yeah, you were not the one who took 10 years of our existence completely away and then tampered with us, taking away so many of the things that made us who we were. Someone manipulated this universe, and then the issue ends with Batman spying something off in the distance. He starts digging in his cave and he finds that yellow button from the Watchmen, and then we hear Dr. Manhattan speaking as he looks down at Earth. Yeah, Dr. Manhattan from the Watchmen comics is the one who tampered with the DC universe and turned it into the New 52. Now, as I said, I feel like I should come in here for all the people out there who don't know how I feel about this big revelation and kind of refresh you guys on, because I know that a lot of people are hyped for this. A lot of people are looking at this like, oh man, the Watchmen fighting the DC universe, that's gonna be huge. But I also know that there are other people out there who look at it like, man, DC has screwed over Alan Moore in so many ways, and now they're taking one of the best things that he ever did, and they're gonna turn it into a DC Comics thing. It should have remained its own separate thing. Leave him alone, leave his creation completely alone, step away from that. DC has tampered with the Watchmen enough, just leave it alone. I don't want to see the Watchmen mingling in with the DC universe, and I can understand that because, as I said, Alan Moore has kind of been screwed over multiple times by DC Comics. In fact, many say it drove him mad. But at the same time, I think this is brilliant. I really do, and not for like some fan service kind of way of, oh man, it's these characters I always wanted to see fight. They're never gonna fight. I don't know why I jumbled all my words on there. But yeah, I don't really look at it as being cool for that reason. I look at it as being cool because, yes, the New 52 lost so many of the things that made DC Comics, such as the love, the legacy, and the laughter. Just that sense of, hey, we can have fun, we can be bright and uplifting. And saying that it was the Watchmen that did that, that is genius to me, because the reason why the New 52 was created, it's not because Dr. Manhattan came in there and tampered with the DC universe. It's because decades ago a comic called The Watchmen came out, and it took our concept of superheroes and made them bloody and mature. It had them swear, it had murder, it had war, it had politics, it had several things that I don't even feel like saying for those people out there who aren't ready to really read something like that. Yeah, man, it took what we knew about superheroes and used that to completely mind fudge us all by twisting it on its head and making it super gritty and realistic. And ever since that came out, that and in all honesty, the Dark Knight Returns series from Frank Miller, but especially Watchmen, ever since that came out, there's been a change in the way that people look at comic books. People, after reading The Watchmen, kind of turned to the goofy, fun, old comic books that we had all known and said, oh, well, that's kid stuff. This is the real stuff. And if comics want to get more mature and more adult and aim themselves at that growing audience, they need to be more like this. This is the height of superhero reading right here. We need to make all other comics more like this. And yes, ever since that came out, you have noticed more comics getting more mature, and some handle it well, some handle it not so well. And there have been other books out there that try to stay true to what they are, so capture just a sense of lighthearted fun to them. And there's nothing wrong with any of those. I'm totally fine with taking superheroes and making them more mature, more political, more adult focused. Yes, I am okay with that. I'm also okay with not doing that and keeping them fun and lighthearted. The reason why the New 52 was created was because people working at DC Comics read Watchmen, spent their entire lifetime growing up looking at Watchmen like, yeah man, more comics need to be like this. And not just people at DC, but people in the entire comic book community, whether they be people who actually work in the industry or are just fans of comic books, kept looking at books like The Watchmen saying, this is what more comics need to be like, and they tried to do that with DC Comics. I'm not saying that Jim Lee walked into a boardroom meeting at DC Comics with a copy of Watchmen in his hand, slapped it on the desk and said, this is what the new DC Comics is going to look like. Not at all. But on some level, in their minds, on some subconscious level, yeah, Watchmen is the thing that planted the seed in the entire industry, and then it just grew. And that's what eventually got us to the New 52. So the reason why I look at Dr. Manhattan manipulating the universe and turning it into the New 52 as being brilliant is because they went in there and they had the Watchmen literally do what they figuratively did in the actual real universe, i.e. our universe. But yes, that Rebirth issue came out a long time ago at this point. Like 3 Marvel crossover events happened within that time. So, 8 months. Marvel has too many of those. Anywho, so many things have happened in that time, and DC has been sitting back and waiting. They have been taking their time on this, just letting it build. They haven't even had a book out there where you could go in and just follow the string as it led up to this event. They would have one thing here or there. They had the button happen over in Batman and Flash, and oh my goodness, that was a big thing, but even that took a couple months to come out. In between that time, sit back and relax. They had the mention of Manhattan and not understanding why those words were important over in Titans, but that was it. If you knew what was coming, you got excited, but they didn't progress the story forward any. You wait until the button, that did a little bit, then they stepped back. Then you had the Superman Reborn storyline over in Action Comics and Superman. Okay, a little bit more about what's going on with Manhattan there. A little bit of a very vague warning that, oh, there's someone out there. And then in the most recent Action Comics, we had the Oz effect, in which Superman's dad revealed, oh yes, something out there saved me and something did something to me, and it made sure I wound up on Earth, and it made sure that I saw the worst that mankind had to offer. It was like, okay, someone did that to Jor-El. And then at the end we see that he's there. He's now noticed that Superman has noticed him, so oh, things are amping up. Things are gonna happen. What's gonna happen? But that's it. Over the course of every single storyline going on at DC, over the past year and a half since Rebirth came out, that's all that there's been. They've been sitting back and going, we know what's gonna happen. And you can just sit there and wait. We're gonna let that build. They took their time cooking this, but it has finally come out. Issue number 1 of Doomsday Clock has hit the stands at 11:57 last night. That was kind of weird, but I see what you did there, so alright, I'll let it pass. But it's now finally out, and let me just go ahead and say, I thought this was brilliant. But for the people out there who have not gotten a chance to read it yet, I'm just gonna warn you, you have spent a year and a half waiting for this. You're going to go in there and be like, oh, where's that big final reveal? Oh, when does stuff start? This is a 12-issue series, and Jeff Johns is turning to you and saying, you can wait. Yeah, we're here. This is the event. And now I'm going to tell you the story. This is not another Rebirth issue where at the end of it it's, oh my goodness, everything has changed forever in like 9 different ways. No. This is a story, and we're gonna take our time. Again, I think it's great, but I do just want to warn everyone out there, you're not going to get the big massive reveal in this issue. You're not going to get the major plot twist. You're not going to have the, oh my goodness, everything has changed forever moment. No. This is issue 1 of a 12-issue storyline, and they're taking their time to build it up. But as we like to do here on the Professor Thorgy channel, I don't just come in here and give you my opinions. I also kind of give you a little bit of a play-by-play. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this book actually is. When this book begins, it is in the Watchmen universe, and it has been several years since the end of Watchmen. And you see the world has just gone to pot. You see that there are riots in the street. There are people rising up against corrupt businesses and politicians. You see that there is a murder going on at the White House while the president is still just playing golf. Which, yeah, this thing, in the opening of this, they talk about several things happening around the world. And if you're one of those people out there who's like, well, I don't want politics in my book, you might not want to read this one. Although, for some odd reason, people never complain about politics in DC Comics, even though they put them in there all the time. That's interesting, and I'm sure that there's multiple theories on why that could be. Anywho, so this thing begins, and you see that the world is just tearing itself apart. In fact, there are even missiles being launched at other countries, and it is like on a doomsday level. Like, this is that moment, which is like, yeah, the world is about to end. In fact, they keep reminding you of that all throughout this book. And that was one thing that I found to be incredibly interesting, because I knew this was going to feature the Watchmen and what had happened to them after the end of the Watchmen comic, but it didn't actually sink in until I was reading this, and then I remembered, oh right, the Watchmen comic ended on a massive cliffhanger. And I don't mean a to be continued, come back next week kind of cliffhanger. I mean in a, it's up to you to decide where the story goes from here. We're not going to tell you what happens next. The cliffhanger is kind of the point of this entire book. And this comes in here and it tells you, yeah, you know how Ozymandias tried to unite the world and get everybody to stop fighting each other with this big fake threat of a fake alien race invading, and he destroyed pretty much all of Manhattan with that? Well, also remember how at the end of that thing, Rorschach's notes and his diaries got passed along to the news? and we didn't see what happened after that, and we didn't see if the truth came out, we didn't see like if the world got united. This actually came in there and said, yeah, no, here's the answer to that. Here's what happened after that. It lets you know flat out, this is what happened after Watchmen. And so to all those people who are still really mad that, oh man, you're going in there and you're tampering with what Alan Moore did. Again, I totally understand why you would be mad about that. I'm just gonna let you know, this is not gonna make you happy about that. They are tampering even more with what Alan Moore did. They're coming in there and going, you know that big cliffhanger ending? Yeah, cliffhanger answered, here's what happened. So yeah, again, I can see people being mad about that, but again, myself, I looked at this and I was like, okay, I'm actually on board. And I think the reason why I'm really on board for it, even after I read it and it hit me, oh wow, yeah, the ending to Watchmen has now been answered. The reason why I'm kind of on board with it is, this feels like I'm reading The Watchmen. It is really shocking to me how well they captured the feeling of The Watchmen, and so many other people out there have tried to do that before. Like you remember a couple of years back when DC did that Watchmen prequel series where every single character got their own mini-series, and yeah, they were all just kind of like, they're fine. Some are good, some are bad. What are you gonna say? But this one, the moment that I touched the paper, I went, this is not that glossy, smooth paper that we get in regular DC Comics. This is rougher. This feels like old comic book paper, which it's not entirely, but it feels a lot more like it than modern comic book paper. And then you get to a point in this book where someone just says, shit. And I went, you can't say that in DC Comics. You can say it in Vertigo, you can't say it in DC Comics. And I was reading that and I went, oh, that's the kind of thing they would say in The Watchmen. And in DC Comics, they would bleep that out. They didn't bleep it out. And the coloring in here is so stunningly close. Like, I know everybody is going to congratulate the writer, they're going to congratulate the artist, and yes, both of them are indeed bringing their A game. No one ever talks about the colorist in these books, and holy cow, was this guy on point at recapturing those colors from The Watchmen. He is the one who sold this book the most, and I hate myself because I just talked about how no one ever talks about the colorist, and I'm forgetting the colorist's name. Brad Anderson, everybody! Had to look it up. I'll admit that. But Brad Anderson, holy cow, you were really good in this issue. But yeah, this really felt like I was just reading a follow-up to The Watchmen, and I kind of want to keep talking about the fact that they actually do curse in here, because this is not a Vertigo book, and this is not some weird small side book. This is the main thing that DC has been promoting for the last year and a half. This is what everything has been leading up to. This is what every DC fan is going to pick up and buy and read today. This is what everyone from the oldest fan to the newest fan is going to make sure they walk out of their store with a copy of it. And they were like, yeah, curse. Because that's what would happen in the Watchmen book. And then it hit me, yeah, this is the follow-up to a very mature rated book. And DC is putting it out there to a very mainstream, if not every stream audience out there. This is kind of groundbreaking, because I remember a couple of months back when Marvel brought back the Jessica Jones series. Oh my god, that's been almost a year at this point. God, comics move too fast. But yes, when the Jessica Jones series came out, I thought, well, she was always a Max character, and now they're having her be just a regular Marvel character. And on the front of it, it said in big bold letters, this is not for kids, parental advisory. So I was like, yeah, but you put that on Deadpool and it just means that there's violence in there. What are you going to have happen in Jessica Jones? And she is cursing in there. And I was like, oh shoot. Well, kind of have to applaud Marvel for, even though this isn't a Max book, you still tried to capture the feeling of it like it back when it was a Max book. However, Jessica Jones, not one of your mainstream characters. Yes, she has a TV show, but you know, you're not going to see her on the cover of an Avengers book. You're not going to see her, well, okay, fine, in the new Avengers, but you know what I'm saying. She is not a character who little kids are walking around with her on their shirt. She is someone who is for a very specific audience, and Marvel realizes that audience is fine reading a book that curses. And even still, they put a giant freaking tag on the front of that book that said, not for kids, parental advisory. There's nothing like that on this book. And this is for everybody out there, not for its one own audience that knows exactly what it's getting into. This is for everyone out there. I honestly kind of look at this like it could be a game changer. Like if this was the only book out there that did this, that'd be one thing. But because Jessica Jones also did this over at Marvel, I'm looking at this like it's the beginning of shit maybe not being that bad of a curse word anymore. Maybe it slowly becomes one of those things that, yeah, maybe it starts getting not bleeped out on network television anymore and it just becomes a thing that can be said. Because it made me kind of think of the George Carlin bit, The 7 Dirty Words, which came out in the 70s, and he listed off 7 words that you could never ever say on television. And I didn't hear that until like maybe the late 90s is when I first heard that. And he said piss was one of those words, and I thought, you can say piss on television? And then I realized, wow, things have really changed. Like over the years, people eventually got used to saying curse words that you could never say on television. And I looked at this and I thought, wow, if Marvel's doing it, and now DC is doing it in a major selling it to everyone type of book, yeah, this could be the end of shit being one of the 7 dirty words. I know that has nothing to do with the rest of this book, but this could really be one of those small things that changes a lot of comics in the future. So, come on, people. This is a big deal. All right, let's get back to Watchmen. So basically, the rest of this story is fairly simple. We see that the world is going crazy as they have roughly 3 hours left until these bombs touch down and the world is over. They are not kidding when they say these are the last 3 hours of this planet. And we see Rorschach breaking into a prison to try and go and find these 2 criminals who he can use to try and find God, as he says. I know a lot of people out there are going to say, but Rorschach is dead. He was vaporized at the end of Watchmen. As I was reading this, I went, okay, at first it sounds like Rorschach. You're doing a pretty good job capturing the voice of Rorschach, but then he slowly gets crazier and crazier, and like he only speaks in brief, like almost like facts. Just like, no, yes, this, like just basically almost sounds like the rantings of a crazy person. I can't even mimic it. But it slowly just kind of dawned on me, this, okay, you've got to bring Rorschach back and you were doing okay at first, but man, this really just sounds like someone else at this point. And when someone says to him, yeah, Rorschach's dead, he takes off his glove and reveals he's a black man underneath, and it's like, oh, you're not the old Rorschach. That is definitely not, you're someone new. That explains exactly why you didn't sound like the old Rorschach. Why is someone trying to pretend to be Rorschach? So I said that this issue does not give you a whole bunch of, oh my goodness moments. It's more just laying the groundwork. That was a pretty good oh my goodness moment in which it made me go, who could be the new Rorschach? And I have no idea who they could be. However, I know how we're going to find out, and that will come up later. So he gets these 2 criminals, one of whom is called the Mime, and he never says anything, but he's a very deadly assassin and deadly fighter. But they break into like the evidence locker to try and get his weapons out. His weapons are just invisible, and he just starts grabbing stuff, like just grabbing random things and putting them all over himself. It's like, all right, this, I'm trying to remember back to when I originally read Watchmen and if there was anything in there that I thought was that goofy. Because that did come off pretty goofy. But at the same time, the original Watchmen had a guy called the Comedian who was just a complete raving nut job and gun nut just going around as basically their version of the Punisher. Yeah, there was some oddly violent, goofy stuff back in Watchmen, so okay, I'll let it go. I can buy the Mime. If the Comedian can exist in this world, the Mime can exist in this world. So he gets to these 2 and he takes them to this secret base, and inside is Ozymandias, and he says that their job is they're going to try and find God. When they ask what they're talking about, he says, Dr. Manhattan. He disappeared, but we have to find him again. And then it cuts to the DC universe. And Superman is in bed with Lois Lane, and he's asleep, and he has a dream of the night that his parents died. And his parents, they died in a car crash. Now, as I said, Dr. Manhattan tampered with this universe in order to try and make it darker, more jaded, more bitter. And in the old universe, there had been different versions of Superman's origin story. In the most famous one, his dad died of a heart attack and he was unable to save him, and kind of taught Superman the lesson that he can't save everyone. But in the more recent version of the DC universe, right before the New 52, both his parents were alive for almost his entire life. His dad didn't die until just a few years before the end of that old DC universe, so he spent his entire life with his parents. In the New 52 origin story, both his parents died when he was in high school when they had a car wreck. And this has our Superman having a nightmare about the night that his parents died. And then he wakes up and he says, I had a nightmare. And Lois is like, I've never seen you like this. And then Superman stops and goes, I don't know if I ever have had a nightmare before. Which is kind of, that's my one small maybe kind of critique, is that just kind of seems odd. Like, is that a Kryptonian thing? Is it the yellow rays of the sun keep him from having nightmares? It feels to me like Superman probably would have had nightmares in his life. But at the same time, if Superman is supposed to be the untouchable beacon of hope, I understand what you're trying to say. I get that. And honestly, it's kind of a brilliant metaphor for what Dr. Manhattan has done to him. Is that he came in there and tried to make them all more jaded, darker versions of themselves. So if Superman is a guy who has never had a nightmare, Dr. Manhattan giving him that one nightmare, all right, that actually, I see what you're saying. I see what you're trying to do there. Makes total sense to me. But also, yeah, Dr. Manhattan killed both of his parents in order to try and set him down this darker path, in order to try and make him a darker, more jaded version of himself. In order to turn him into that version, he had to make sure that not only did one of his parents die, he couldn't have either of his parents there. He had to grow up the majority of his life without them. So yeah, him having this nightmare of that thing that very clearly Dr. Manhattan did to Superman, that's actually kind of a great way to end this issue. As I said, I know a lot of people are going in here like, oh man, I can't wait to see what's going to happen in here. And it is all just laying the groundwork. But that nightmare is pretty good groundwork. That's a really good seed to plant. Like, I see why you did that. I see what the message behind that is. I see how that ties into Dr. Manhattan and how this is all going to lead up to the confrontation between Superman and Dr. Manhattan. Yeah, makes total sense to me. So yes, as I said, this issue, it's nothing but just laying the tracks for everything to come in the following issues. And Jeff Johns is really good at that. And yeah, I think he did a damn fine job with this issue. So I can't wait to see what's coming. I can't believe it's going to be 12 issues long, so it might be kind of a long trip to get to that point. But Jeff Johns tends to make for an enjoyable long trip. And he also tends to make that long trip lead up to a great payoff. So yeah, I'm completely on board. But I mentioned, we will find out who the new Rorschach is in another part of this book. At the end of this thing, they tried to mimic what they did with the old Watchmen books, where they would put newspaper clippings to try and inform you about the past. Well, it's been several years since the end of Watchmen, so at the end of this, we do get newspaper clippings that try and let us know every single thing that has happened between the end of Watchmen and now. And the first one is just kind of telling you, hey, everybody, we found out what happened with Ozymandias. We found out that he was doing this thing, and now we have developed this secret government force that's going to try and find him. It's, basically just stuff like that. But then I turned the page, and there were several other newspaper clippings in there, and a couple of them don't really tie into anything at all. Like, there's one that just mentions the death of a certain character, and I was like, who the heck is that? I don't remember them at all. Were they that old villain that Rorschach talked to who had cancer? Is that who this guy was? No, that's not him. Okay, so this is a new guy that they're introducing. Why are they introducing him in this obituary clipping that's just randomly here? And that's when it hit me. They were going to plant so many seeds over the next 12 issues for all the big mysteries of what is going on in Doomsday Clock in these newspaper clippings. We are going to have to go through them and read every single one of these in order to try and paste together what the heck happened to the DC universe and to the Watchmen themselves. This is kind of brilliant. especially when you consider that Rorschach was one of those crazy guys who would have a bunch of newspaper clippings all over their wall with a bunch of string connecting them to try and figure out what the heck they mean. This book is going to try and turn you into that crazy person with the newspaper clippings all over the place. In fact, on one half of the page are the newspaper clippings, and on the other half of the page is a menu for a diner. And at the beginning of this book, Rorschach is talking about how he always goes to this one diner every single morning. So it's very clear this was Rorschach at that diner, and we were supposed to be looking through his eyes at the newspaper clippings on one side and the menu on the other. But it made me then go, wait a second. He always goes to this diner every single morning. Could it be because there's some weird secret clues on that menu? Bum, bum, bum. And I know a lot of people are looking at this like, well, that doesn't sound like Rorschach. That sounds more like The Question. Rorschach was based on The Question. The Question existed in another comic book universe years before coming over to DC Comics, and Rorschach was meant to be a parody of The Question. Yeah, he kind of made me go, oh yeah, that's exactly, I see it, I get it. I totally understand why Rorschach was meant to be The Question. So in the end, as I said, this issue does a really good job setting everything up, not going too big. It's making sure that it stays small for now. It's taking its time. It is going to slowly lure you in to what the big event is going to be, and I am so happy to have a book like that. It has been so long since we got some giant, massive storyline like this that didn't feel like it just had to grab you all at the beginning. It knows it's already grabbed you. It can take its time with this, but it was when I got to those newspaper clippings that I went, God, this is going to be brilliant. This is so smart that they are going to take their time planting seeds all over the place, and they are going to force you to try and connect them yourselves. That's where we're going to learn who the new Rorschach is. He's going to be in these freaking newspaper clippings. We're going to look through there and be like, oh, I understand. Like, when they eventually reveal who he is, people who did not read those newspaper clippings are going to be saying, who the heck is this guy? All the people who read those newspaper clippings like, oh, it's the guy they've been secretly talking about this entire time. Oh, I get it. I see everything's connected now. So yeah, I'm completely on board. I'm very happy with this first issue. As I said, it's not a big, massive, oh, I gotta go and talk to everybody about this one specific thing, because there aren't any moments like that in here, but it's not meant to be that. It is meant to just lay the groundwork, plant some seeds, and it looks like it's gonna grow a damn good crop out of this. So thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this issue. As always, you can also reach me on Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr at Professor Thorgy. And if you like these videos, then make sure that you share them around the web. It's the best way to help our channel grow. And if you want to see other comic book videos from us, we do them every single Wednesday on this channel. And then on the weekends, we do other fun, geeky videos such as movie reviews, game reviews. So if you want to check those out, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time. Bye.